The night began like any other. Keanu Reeves and Alexandra Grant stepped into a quiet restaurant in Los Angeles, hoping to escape the noise of the world for just one evening. The soft glow of candles painted the room with warmth, and for a while laughter floated between them as if no shadows existed. But then something shifted. Alexandra's smile faded as she caught a look in Keanu's eyes. A heaviness he could not hide, a storm pressing against the calm mask he always wore. She leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "You're carrying something again, aren't you?" Keanu hesitated, his fingers tightening around the glass of water. For years he had been the man the world admired for humility and kindness, for always giving without asking anything in return. But that same humility made him silent when pain struck, and Alexandra had seen it too many times before. "It's nothing," he whispered. But Alexandra shook her head. "I know you. It's never nothing. What truth are you hiding from me this time?" The question pierced deeper than the soft music around them. Keanu lowered his gaze, his heart aching. He wanted to tell her everything, yet fear held him back. Because the truth he carried was not simple. It was heavy, wrapped in grief, regret, and choices he had buried for years. Alexandra reached across the table, her hand covering his. "You don't need to protect me from your pain," she said quietly. "I would rather face it with you than be kept outside of it." Keanu's throat tightened. The world only saw his calm smile, but Alexandra saw the shadows underneath. He thought of the letters that had arrived weeks earlier. Anonymous, sharp, filled with words that sliced into old wounds. They reminded him of a past he never spoke of. A past that threatened to unravel the quiet life he had built. He had hidden those letters, believing silence would shield her. But now, as Alexandra searched his eyes with quiet determination, he knew he could not hide forever. He leaned back in his chair, his voice low. "There are things about my past, things I thought I could carry alone, but someone out there refuses to let me bury them." Alexandra's grip tightened. "Someone? What do you mean?" Keanu hesitated again. He remembered the first envelope, slipped under his door late at night. Inside, a single message. "You can't hide the truth forever. One day she will know." Since then, more had come, each one sharper, each one digging deeper into the parts of his life he kept sacred. Losses that had shaped him, regrets that haunted him. Alexandra had seen the surface of his grief, but not the full depth, and now someone wanted to force it into the light. As the memory rushed back, Keanu sighed, his eyes full of sorrow. "Someone knows pieces of my story I never shared. They want me to confess it all, not out of love, but to break me. I kept it from you because I didn't want you to carry the weight." Alexandra's eyes glistened with tears, but her voice was steady. "Keanu, you don't understand. The only thing that breaks me is when you shut me out. Whatever truth you carry, whatever pain, I would rather hold it with you than let it crush you alone." Her words struck his heart with both comfort and fear. Comfort, because she loved him beyond the image the world knew. Fear, because the truth he hid was darker than she imagined. It was not just grief. It was a series of choices he blamed himself for. Choices that had cost him dearly. The night ended with silence as they walked back to the car. Alexandra held his hand tightly, refusing to let go even when he tried to keep distance. When they reached their home, Keanu paused at the door, his chest heavy. He turned to her, his voice trembling. "If I tell you, everything might change." Alexandra looked into his eyes with unwavering strength. "Or maybe if you tell me, everything will finally begin." Keanu stepped inside, his mind torn. The letters on his desk waited, silent but powerful, daring him to speak the truth he had buried for so long. Alexandra followed, her presence like a light pressing back the dark. And in that moment, Keanu realized he could no longer hide. The shocking truth he carried would either shatter their bond or prove it stronger than the storms ahead. The moment Alexandra stepped into the study, she knew the letters had not finished with them. A thin envelope lay on the desk like a quiet threat. No stamp, no name, only her initials written in careful ink. She glanced at Keanu, who stood in the doorway with that gentle, steady calm that always tried to protect her from the worst. "Open it," he said softly. She did. Inside was a single Polaroid and a short note. The Polaroid showed a hospital corridor late at night, empty except for the shadow of a man sitting with his head in his hands. The note said, "The truth waits where you left it." Alexandra felt the room tilt. This was not only about fame. This was about an old wound that still bled in silence. Keanu came closer, his eyes on the photo, and something in his face changed. Not shock. Recognition. He swallowed hard, as if the picture reached into a place he had promised himself he would never visit again. "How long has this lived inside you?" Alexandra whispered. He lowered his gaze. "Long enough to forget how to breathe without it." The words hung between them, fragile and true. The world loved him for his quiet strength, but strength does not erase pain. It only teaches you how to hold it without breaking, and even that has a cost. Alexandra wanted to pull him into an embrace, but she remembered the note from the last time. The cruel message that tried to make her love feel like harm. She placed her hand on the desk instead and said, "We will follow this trail. We will not let it control us." Keanu nodded, but his eyes flicked back to the Polaroid. That corridor, that chair, that posture, he knew exactly where it was. And if the sender knew it too, then the past was not only remembered, it was being tracked. They called Michael, the one person outside their circle who knew how to listen for the footsteps no one else could hear. He arrived quickly, moved quietly, and studied the photo with careful eyes. "No metadata," he said. "And the paper is new. The sender had the original, scanned it, and reprinted to avoid markers. This person works in shadows." Alexandra watched Keanu while Michael spoke. She could see the ache gathering behind his steady expression. The ache of a man who had learned to carry storms without letting them spill on anyone else. She loved him for that. She also refused to let him drown in it now. The next clue did not come by mail. It arrived in person. At Alexandra's gallery, as she prepared a new show, a woman in her 50s walked in with careful steps and searching eyes. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly, "but I think this belongs to him." She placed a small folded program on the counter, a funeral program, carefully kept, corners worn. Alexandra's breath caught. The woman's voice shook as she added, "He came to the service and sat in the back. He didn't speak to anyone. But after everyone left, I found this in the second row." The woman pointed to a faint pencil mark on the inside flap, a line from a poem, written in gentle script. "The sea keeps all the names we whisper to it." Beneath it, a first name, almost erased. Alexandra thanked her, then stepped into the back room and held the paper like something holy. She knew Keanu's handwriting at a glance. She traced the line with her fingertip and felt her heart break and expand at once. He had been there. He had grieved quietly, far from cameras, far from the world's noise. This was the kind of truth he hid. A truth made of love and loss and a humility that refused to turn pain into performance. But there was still more. Someone wanted this tenderness twisted into a weapon. Someone wanted to turn his kindness into a confession of guilt. That night, the sky over Los Angeles turned the color of a bruise, and the wind carried a chill that did not belong to summer. Alexandra and Keanu sat on the floor of the living room, letters spread around them like fallen leaves. He spoke slowly at first, like a man learning a language he once forgot. "Years ago," he said, "I promised to be there for someone who was going through the worst season of their life. I meant it. I would have given anything. But one night when they needed me most, I didn't make it in time." He stopped, breathing carefully. "I blame myself for that night. Even now." Alexandra listened without interrupting. She did not rush to fix it. She knew some truths do not want answers. They want witnesses. Michael, cross-legged beside the coffee table, slid a folder forward. "I dug into security logs near that hospital," he said. "There was a malfunction on the main road that night. Traffic held for hours. You weren't late because you chose to be. The city was." Keanu closed his eyes, and Alexandra watched his shoulders loosen a fraction, like a rope slowly untying from the past. Still, he shook his head. "I should have left earlier," he murmured. Alexandra touched the back of his hand. "Or maybe you did the best anyone could, and grief is lying to you about what control you had." A small sound at the door cut the quiet. Alexandra stood and found a parcel on the welcome mat wrapped in brown paper, tied with ordinary string. Inside was a film canister, the kind no one used anymore, and a note that stole the warmth from the room. "Midnight. Union Station. Bring the past with you. Come alone or I tell her everything you didn't." The handwriting was the same, neat and bitter. Alexandra read it twice, then a third time, and felt anger join fear inside her chest. This was not only about truth. This was about control, about making them dance to a tune they didn't choose. Keanu reached for the canister. "Don't," Alexandra said, too sharp then softer. "Don't open it yet." Michael took it instead and examined the edges with a small light. "No powder, no residue, it's clean," he said. then slid the film into a viewer he carried for moments like this. Grainy images flickered to life. Night footage, a hospital entrance, the same corridor from the Polaroid, a chair, the shadow of a man. Then a second figure appeared on screen and stopped beside the chair. The frame held for a breath too long, then cut to black. On the final strip, a faint caption had been scratched by hand. "You don't deserve to heal." The cruelty of it hurt more than any threat. Alexandra turned to Keanu, expecting to see the old ache win, but his face, drawn and pale, held something new now. Resolve. "We are not going to Union Station alone," he said, voice low but steady. "We are not going to meet a shadow on their terms." Michael agreed. "We control the ground," he said. "We set the light." They chose a different path. Alexandra proposed it first, surprising herself with the strength in her own voice. "Invite truth to the table," she said. "Not to play their game, but to end it. If they are forcing the past into the open, then let us bring a light they cannot dim." Keanu listened, then nodded. "But we will do it with respect," he said. "No spectacle. No blood for cameras. Only what might help someone else breathe easier, if they are carrying the same kind of night." Michael made calls, quiet ones. He arranged a private room at a small community center instead of a station, with good lighting, with people nearby, but discreet. If the sender came, they would not find two helpless targets in the dark. They would find two people ready to be unafraid. Alexandra wrote a short message and sent it to the number that had delivered the demands. "We choose a place with witnesses and peace. Come if you want a conversation, not a performance." There was no reply. Hours passed. The city kept breathing. The room filled with a hush that felt like a held note. As the sun slipped behind the hills, Keanu and Alexandra sat shoulder to shoulder on the couch, the film canister on the table between them like a strange clock. He rested his head against hers, and for the first time since the restaurant, he spoke without hesitation. He told her the whole shape of the night that had changed him. He told her the name he had been afraid to say aloud because it tasted like both salt and grace. He told her about the promise he thought he broke, and the guilt that had mistaken itself for truth inside his heart for years. He told her how kindness became his answer, not to erase the pain, but to keep it from turning him cruel. Alexandra listened with tears on her face and dignity in her spine. When he finished, she whispered, "If the past is a tide, then you are the shoreline that stayed." The phone buzzed on the table. One new message. "Fine. Your place. Tomorrow. But come ready to admit what you could have done and didn't." The words tried to humiliate. They only clarified the enemy's hunger. The sender did not want healing. They wanted confession without mercy, truth without tenderness. But Keanu had already chosen a different way. Michael leaned forward, tapping the screen off. "Tomorrow we meet," he said. "We do it safely. We do it with boundaries. And if they try to turn light into a blade, we don't hand it to them." Keanu nodded. Alexandra exhaled slowly and took his hand, not afraid to show it. The room felt less haunted now. The letters, the film, the Polaroid, all of it had tried to make them small. Instead, the truth shared between them had made them larger than the shadow that stalked them. Just before midnight, Alexandra walked to the window and drew back the curtain. The city stretched beneath them, a map of quiet fires. She thought of the people out there carrying their own unread letters, their own hospital corridors, their own promises they feared they had broken. She turned back to the man she loved and said, "Tomorrow isn't about winning. It's about not letting grief decide who we are." He smiled, tired and true, and about letting kindness finish what fear started. They turned off the lights. The house settled around them. And somewhere in the city, a stranger read their reply and prepared for a meeting they believed would break him. They had no idea that the only thing breaking now was the power they thought they had. The next day arrived heavy with silence. Keanu woke early, the sun still low, spilling pale light across the room. Alexandra was already awake, sitting by the window with a sketchbook open on her lap. Though she had not drawn a single line, her eyes were fixed on the horizon, her thoughts on what was to come. Today they would meet the person who had dragged their private grief into the open. Today the shadow would step into the light. Keanu walked to her quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. She leaned into his touch for a moment, then closed the sketchbook. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Keanu nodded, though inside his heart carried both fear and resolve. "I am," he said, "because hiding has already cost me too much." Michael arrived mid-morning with steady eyes and calm instructions. We have the community room set, he said. There will be cameras for safety, but no broadcast. If they show, we'll be ready. If they don't, that tells us something too. Alexandra slipped her hand into Keanu's, her grip firm. We'll face whatever comes, she whispered. The hours crawled by until evening. When they finally stepped into the small community hall, the space felt almost sacred. Simple chairs, a long table, soft lights above. The air smelled faintly of wood polish. It was not grand. It was not dramatic. It was honest. And that was exactly what they wanted. They waited in silence. Alexandra sat close to Keanu, her hand resting over his. Michael stood near the back, watching carefully. The door creaked open after 20 minutes, and a man entered slowly. Tall, thin, his clothes worn, his face shadowed by years of bitterness. His eyes darted around the room, landing finally on Keanu. There was no greeting, no warmth, only accusation. You don't deserve peace, the man said flatly. You let people down. You let her down. And now you pretend kindness erases that, but it doesn't. Alexandra's chest tightened at the venom in his tone, but Keanu remained still. His voice when it came was calm and low. You're right about one thing, he said. Kindness doesn't erase grief. Nothing does. But it can keep grief from turning into hate. The man's face twisted. Easy words for someone the world worships. They call you humble, they call you pure, but I know the truth. You carry guilt just like the rest of us, and you should admit it. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady. I do admit it. I have carried guilt for years. I have asked myself if I could have done more, if I could have saved her, if I could have been stronger. But I also know guilt is not the full truth. I did what I could. I was present in love even if I wasn't present in every moment. Grief told me I failed, but love tells me I tried. The man's hands shook as he gripped the back of a chair. No, you failed, and people should know. Alexandra finally spoke, her voice clear but firm. They already do. Because Keanu speaks with honesty, not perfection. You want to make him smaller with your threats, but the truth makes him larger than your anger ever will. The man glared at her, but her words seemed to strike deeper than he expected. He turned back to Keanu, his eyes narrowing. You think this is over? You think admitting weakness makes you untouchable? Keanu shook his head gently. No, I don't think I am untouchable. I think I am human, and that is enough. For a moment, silence filled the room. The man's breathing grew ragged, his anger fraying into something else, something closer to sorrow. Michael stepped forward slowly. You've made your point, he said. But this ends here. No more letters. No more shadows. The man looked at all three of them, his shoulders sagging. For the first time, he seemed smaller, almost fragile. You don't understand, he muttered. I needed someone to carry my pain because I couldn't carry it myself. His voice cracked. And watching the world love you when I had nothing, it broke me. Keanu's expression softened. He rose and walked closer, though Alexandra's hand clung to his. I do understand, he said quietly. Loss makes us desperate for someone to blame. I've felt that too. But hurting others will never heal you. It only deepens the wound. The man's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but he turned sharply and left before anyone could say more. The door slammed behind him and the room fell quiet again. Alexandra exhaled shakily, her body trembling. Keanu wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her close. Michael sighed. He may not return, but the obsession might not be gone either. We'll stay cautious. Keanu nodded, but his heart was elsewhere. He thought about the man's words, the bitterness rooted in grief. He thought about how easily sorrow could have dragged him into the same darkness, if not for kindness, if not for Alexandra's steady love. That night, as they sat together at home, Alexandra rested her head on his chest. He tried to break you, she whispered. Keanu kissed her forehead softly. He reminded me of why I can't let grief define me. Because it could have been me if I had let the pain turn me bitter. Instead, I chose love. Alexandra smiled through her tears. And that's why I will never stop holding your hand no matter what anyone says. Keanu smiled too, tired but true. He knew the battle was not over. The man could return. The shadows could deepen. But something stronger lived between them now. An unshakable choice to face grief with kindness and to face fear with truth. The night after the meeting should have brought peace, but instead it carried a new kind of unease. Alexandra woke to the sound of Keanu shifting restlessly beside her. He was not asleep. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, his mind far away. When she touched his arm gently, he whispered, I saw his face, Alexandra, and in his eyes I saw what grief can do when love doesn't guide it. I could have been him. His voice cracked and she pulled him close, holding him tightly. "But you're not," she whispered, "because you chose kindness. You chose resilience. That is what makes the difference." Morning came with another blow. Outside their home, a crowd of reporters had gathered, shouting questions. Someone had leaked the story of the confrontation. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed forward, and headlines twisted the truth into spectacle. Keanu Reeves confronted by stalker obsessed with his past. Alexandra's stomach turned as she read the news online. The world was feeding on their pain again, and this time, it was not just letters in the shadows. It was a fire spreading through every screen. Michael arrived quickly, his face grim. The man must have spoken to someone, maybe even leaked the photos. Now it's not just about him, it's about the entire world watching. If we don't act, the narrative will crush you. Keanu listened quietly, then said softly, "I will not fight lies with anger. I will face them with truth." But before they could plan their next step, another package arrived. This one was not left at the door or the gallery. It was placed inside Alexandra's car. She found it when she opened the door to drive to her studio. Her hands trembled as she lifted it, and Michael rushed to open it safely. Inside was a single object, a cracked pocket watch, old and weathered. Tucked beneath it was a note written in the same neat hand. "Time does not heal. It only reminds. And she will learn that too." Alexandra's heart pounded as she looked at the watch. Keanu recognized it immediately. It had belonged to a friend he had lost years ago. Someone whose memory still followed him like a ghost. "How did he get this?" Alexandra asked in shock. Keanu shook his head, his face pale. "I gave it away long ago. Someone must have kept it. Someone must have found a way to use it now." The message was clear. The stalker was not only digging into his past, he was stealing pieces of it, twisting memories into weapons. Alexandra clutched Keanu's hand tightly. "He's trying to make me afraid of your love," she whispered. "But I won't let him." That night, Keanu and Alexandra sat with Michael, trying to decide what to do. Alexandra wanted to fight back, to call the press, to tell the truth before lies spread further. Michael urged caution, warning that the stalker might push harder if cornered. Keanu listened to both sides, then spoke with calm resolve. "We cannot live in fear of him. If he wants to expose my grief, I will do it first. I will speak not to defend myself, but to show that grief is not shame. It is proof of love." Alexandra looked at him, her eyes full of both fear and admiration. "Are you sure?" she whispered. Keanu nodded. "I have spent too long hiding. The truth can't hurt me if I choose to give it freely." The next evening, Keanu prepared a statement. Alexandra sat beside him as he wrote, his words slow and deliberate. He wrote not about the stalker, not about threats, but about his own journey. His losses, his mistakes, his resilience. "I will not let him write my story," Keanu said softly. "I will write it myself." But just as they prepared to release the statement, a new message arrived. This one was different. No threats, no riddles. Only 6 words that made Alexandra's blood run cold. "Meet me or she will suffer." Keanu's hands clenched around the paper. Alexandra's eyes filled with fear, but she shook her head fiercely. "No, he is trying to break you with me. Don't give him the power." But Keanu's face was set, his voice steady. "He already has the power if I do nothing. I cannot risk you." Michael stood, his jaw tight. "Then we do this on our terms. If he wants a meeting, we'll set the place, we'll set the time, and we'll make sure you're not alone." Keanu looked at Alexandra, his eyes full of love and pain. "I have spent my life carrying grief quietly. But if this is the final storm, then I will walk into it. Not for myself, for you." The hours after the threat were the longest Keanu and Alexandra had ever lived through together. The message, "Meet me or she will suffer," sat on the table like a blade. Alexandra paced the room, her hands trembling, while Keanu sat still, his eyes dark with thought. Michael leaned against the wall, scanning every detail of the message again as if some hidden clue might leap out and save them from the choice ahead. Finally, Keanu spoke. "We set the meeting," he said. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly as they rested on his knees. "But we do it on our terms. No shadows, no traps. If he wants me, he will face me in the light." Alexandra turned to him, her voice breaking. "And what if the light isn't enough? What if he tries to hurt you or me?" Keanu stood and pulled her into his arms. "Then we fight not with anger, but with truth. He wants fear to divide us. We will not give it to him." Michael arranged the place. A small library that closed early, its back room quiet, its lights soft. Security would watch from nearby, hidden but close. The stalker agreed with a single reply to their message. One chance. Midnight. The day dragged like a heavy chain. Alexandra spent it painting, her brushstrokes wild and trembling, trying to pour her fear into colors. Keanu spent it writing, filling pages with thoughts he had never said aloud. Words about grief, about guilt, about resilience. When Alexandra asked him why he wrote, he smiled faintly. If he silences me, my words will remain. And if I survive, I will share them. Midnight came. The library was still, its shelves dark, the air heavy with dust and quiet. Keanu and Alexandra sat at the table together, their hands clasped. Michael waited just outside the door, his ear sharp, his phone ready. The stalker arrived minutes later, slipping into the room with the same bitter eyes they had seen before. He carried no weapon, only a folder stuffed with papers. He dropped it on the table, his voice sharp. The world deserves to know. Every failure, every regret, every moment you let someone down, I will make sure they see you for what you really are. Alexandra's grip on Keanu's hand tightened, but Keanu did not flinch. He opened the folder slowly, scanning the pages. Photographs, notes, letters, all twisted pieces of his past curated to tell a story of failure. He set them down gently and looked at the man. You have spent years collecting my pain, he said softly. But you forgot one thing. Pain does not make me unworthy. It makes me human. The stalker's face twisted in anger. No, he snapped. It makes you weak. They call you kind, they call you humble, but it's all a mask. I will tear it away. Keanu leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. You cannot tear away what I have already given freely. I have spoken of my grief. I have admitted my guilt, but I have also chosen to live with respect, humility, and kindness. That is not a mask. That is my truth. Alexandra spoke next, her voice strong despite the tears in her eyes. You think exposing his scars will break him, but those scars are why he can love. They are why he lifts others when he himself is heavy. You want to shame him for his humanity, but humanity is his strength. The stalker's breathing grew ragged. He slammed his hands on the table, but his voice cracked with something closer to despair than rage. Then why do I still feel empty? Why does the world cheer for you while I drown in silence? Keanu's heart ached at the words. He saw not just an enemy, but a mirror of what grief can do when it festers without kindness. Because you chose bitterness, he said gently. I could have chosen it too, but I chose love instead. Love does not erase loss, but it gives loss meaning, and it is never too late to choose differently. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. The stalker's eyes filled with tears, but he turned abruptly, storming out before anyone could stop him. The door slammed shut and the echoes lingered. Michael rushed in, but the man was gone, vanished into the night. Alexandra collapsed against Keanu, her body trembling. You could have been hurt, she whispered. Keanu held her tightly, pressing his forehead to hers. No, he said softly. The danger was real, but the greatest danger would have been to let fear dictate who we are. They left the library hand in hand, their steps slow but steady. The folder of twisted truths remained behind, powerless now that Keanu had spoken his own story. That night, back in their home, Alexandra curled beside him on the couch. He wanted to break you, she whispered. Keanu smiled faintly. Instead, he reminded me why I will never stop choosing kindness. Because even in the face of hate, it is the only thing that keeps us human. The night after the library confrontation carried a strange quiet. Alexandra lay awake beside Keanu, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, steady but heavy, as if even in sleep he was wrestling shadows. She knew the stalker had left the room, but she also knew obsession does not vanish with one slammed door. Somewhere in the city, that man was still carrying bitterness like a flame in his chest, and flames, if left unchecked, always look for something to burn. In the morning, Michael brought news. He disappeared again, he said. No phone activity, no sightings, but I believe he will return. People consumed by hate never walk away after only one attempt. They come back when they think you've let your guard down. Alexandra's hands trembled at his words, but Keanu placed his hand over hers. Then we do not let our guard down, but we also do not let fear own us. For a few days, they tried to live normally. Alexandra painted, her brush finding colors of hope again. Keanu spent quiet hours reading and writing, filling his notebook with thoughts about resilience, loss, and kindness. They walked in public hand in hand, refusing to hide. Even when cameras captured every step, the world, still buzzing about the leaked confrontation, began to shift. Instead of seeing scandal, people began to see something deeper. a love that stood tall in storms, a man who faced grief not with denial but with dignity. Then, just as they began to breathe easier, the stalker made his final move. A package arrived at Alexandra's gallery, larger than any before. Inside was not a letter, not a photo, but a projector reel. Taped to it was a note: "Play this for him. If he does not confess, the next time will not be so kind." Michael tested it first, making sure it was safe. Then in their living room that night, they watched as the reel flickered onto the wall. Grainy images filled the room, clips of Keanu at his lowest moments filmed secretly over the years. Sitting alone at graves, walking in the rain with his head down, pausing on subway benches in silence, the stalker's voice played over the images, distorted but sharp. "You cannot hide the truth. You are broken. You are nothing without your grief. And she will see it too." Alexandra's eyes filled with tears, not because of the images, but because of the cruelty in the words. She turned to Keanu, afraid of what he might feel, afraid he might finally break. But when she looked at him, she saw something different. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He reached out and took her hand. "These are not weapons," he said softly. "These are moments of humanity. Yes, I was broken. Yes, I carry grief. But that does not make me weak. It makes me real. And if the world sees it, then maybe they will understand their own pain better too." Alexandra wept openly now, her tears falling against his hand. "You are not broken," she whispered. "You are proof that love can grow even in broken ground." Michael nodded firmly. "Then we end this by choosing to release the truth ourselves. No more hiding, no more running. If he wants to expose you, let it be on your terms, not his." So they did. The very next day, Keanu and Alexandra shared the reel publicly, not as humiliation but as testimony. Alongside it, Keanu gave a statement. "These are pieces of my life," he said gently. "Times when grief was heavy, times when silence was my companion. But grief does not mean weakness. It means I loved deeply, and love, even when followed by loss, is never shameful. If you see me broken, then know you are not alone in your own brokenness. And if you see me rise, then know you can rise too." The world reacted with shock, then with admiration. Fans wrote messages of solidarity, sharing their own stories of loss, of resilience, of finding strength in weakness. Instead of shame, the reel became a light for thousands who had once felt alone in their sorrow. Alexandra watched the shift with tears of pride. The stalker had tried to break them with shadows, but truth had turned those shadows into light. A week later, the stalker was found and taken into custody. When asked why, he simply muttered, "I wanted the world to see him fall." But the world had seen something else. They had seen a man who refused to fall, a man who chose humility and kindness in the face of cruelty. That night, as Keanu and Alexandra sat together on their balcony, the city glowing beneath them, Alexandra whispered, "You gave them more than your truth. You gave them hope." Keanu smiled gently, his arm around her shoulders. "Hope is the only gift grief cannot take away. And love is the only truth worth living for." They sat in silence then, hand in hand, their hearts lighter than they had been in weeks. The storm had passed, but its lessons remained. Grief had shaped Keanu's story, but love had defined it, and Alexandra knew, without a doubt, that no shadow could ever dim the light they carried together.